I came up with the concept that I've seen that no matter how many children are in a family, when a parent dies, and there could be one person, this dynamic of three personalities always shows up, where you have the
Mhm.
caretaker, the executor, and the one that doesn't like give a shit. And they clash at
Mhm.
the emptying of the home.
Mhm.
And the issue is that the caretaker spends years caring for mom or dad. They never take money because it's life full circle, and that's what they're supposed to do as a human, they probably feel, because they have that mentality. But as soon as their brother John becomes the executor, well, now they want reimbursement for that money. So, like,
Mhm.
there should be a law that if you're caring for your parents and there's a will, you're getting your hourly rate, whatever that's supposed to be, and
Mhm.
you'll avoid all these family conflicts.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to 45 Forward on Bold Brave TV. I'm your host, Ron Roel. Now, over the course of our life, we're likely to experience a lot of stressful events. The top stressor, interestingly, after the death of a spouse and divorce, is moving. In today's episode, I'll be talking with Robert Esposito, who is the owner of Relocators, a multidimensional moving and transitioning company, who will be tackling the challenges of moving, especially as we get older. Rob is the author of a terrific new book, Nobody Move, without reading this. So now let's meet our guest, Robert Esposito. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ron. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having
Pleasure
me.
to pleasure to have you. This is an important topic, and we go through it. And you, what's interesting is that it's not just about moving. You have an interest in broader context about making transitions in life. So speaking of which, we have a lot to talk about, but I'm always interested in my guests' life themselves. So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
I thank you, and thank you for having me. Thank you for the warm introduction. My father was a city fireman, and my mother was a secretary, and
Mm-hmm.
she had to liquidate her mother's home. She was, I guess I'd call it the caretaker of the family. And
Mm-hmm.
we were moving her out to Long Island, and she put an ad in the paper, old stuff out, old stuff out, brings the money in, let us show you where to begin. And from that, she was one of Long Island's first estate sale companies. And what was a
Interesting.
joke to me as a teen, I wound up helping her later on.
Wow, interesting. So, mom and son, I like that story. Yeah, it's
Yes,
different spin on development of a family business. So that's great. So it became yours.
absolutely.
So let's talk about the founding of Relocators, and talk about what the company is about. You know what the basic goals are,
Sure.
and your services.
So I went to St. Joseph's College and I was helping my mother out with cleanouts. And I was always
Mm-hmm.
being asked to do small deliveries into assisted livings. So I saw that the industry was fragmented and
Mm-hmm.
transition out of a home took so many different people to do it.
Right.
I borrowed $4,000 from my father and I purchased my first box truck and I incorporated relocators to try to provide like an end to end solution to
Okay.
transitioning. That's how I started. And, from the first day, I was able to get a few jobs from my mother's clients and, make it work. I think within 6 months, I never had a secondary job again.
How long ago was that?
18 years.
18 years. It goes quickly. Okay.
I just hit 40. It feels like it's going quickly.
Well, there you
Yeah.
go. So you're right in my demographic, 45 forward. You're right there in midlife.
Yep.
Yeah, good, good. So let's describe a little bit about it. So I know that you're sort of end to end, as you said. So it's full service moving. I guess you have how does that work? So you have same day service where you have people helping to move and then people helping to actually locate a new location. Is that right?
Yes. So we do a multitude of services. We do full service moving,
Mhm.
packing, which includes packing, full service storage. We also do online auctions, estate sales, house cleanouts, and one of our best services is where we can, clean out a house and move the other person out and have two homes ready in one day. So we really try
Mhm.
to be as efficient as possible for the homeowner.
Mhm. Yeah. And I suppose so. I deal with generally a little bit of older demographic, um, but I assume also there are differences at different ages, right? So I mean, there's the stress overall of moving. I mean, big change, a lot of stuff, and I assume that the stressors are probably they're probably sort of equivalent. If you're in your 40s versus your 60s, but they're different. So I guess in your 40s, you're maybe moving your whole family, whereas later on, you're maybe moving yourself and your spouse. But it's psychologically also like, okay, this is it, and you're
Yes.
downsizing often. So tell me what some of the differences from sort of midlife through later life.
So in the book, I actually talk about this right away in like the about the book section where there's four main reasons. It's your caretaker is making you move because, well, they're your caretaker. It's a
Hmm.
positive life transition where you're moving ahead. I don't say negative. I say a non-positive because you never know if a divorce is a negative to some people. It's all personal choice, or
Right.
changing jobs is a negative. So you have all those downsizing, but then you have the downsizing and a caretaker because life goes full circle and now your children want you near, or your children are putting you in a place to have more care for you, and that's where it kind of transitions.
Hmm. Yeah.
The person who's
Yeah.
once capable.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, take me through some of the initial steps, though. So, someone wants to move. What are some of the immediate things you try to handle with them? I think that probably you handle all the logistical stuff, as I mentioned, but you probably feel like like a part-time therapist too, initially.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh. So,
Absolutely,
what are the
especially. Go ahead.
what are their concerns? What are some of the things that you immediately have to affect and kind of calm and sort of get them oriented toward the process?
I think the number one thing you can do with any vendor, especially that's dealing with somebody through a stressful or emotional time, is understand that they're not just a transaction, and there's a human element to them, and that you understand the human element. It's one of those things where it's one of the top three stressors, and next to serious illness. Like, how does moving come before cancer? But the fact is, it's not the logistical move, and that's kind of what I'm putting a voice on. It's like this inner battle that I think most people have between like home and grandma's house childhood feelings and late teens promiscuity or backpacking through Europe. And you like kind of personify all of that into these pieces. Like if your children are moving out of the house and now it's time to downsize, you start pulling the crib out of the attic, and then you get those
Mm,
emotions. So
right.
understanding what they're going through, I think, is the biggest thing you can do, and helping them with a plan where you say to them, "Hey, I'm hired by you, and I'll do whatever you want, but you're wrong here. This is the best thing you could do. I'm the expert." And being
Hmm.
able to have that confidence is very important.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. And so when they engage you, so you basically you sit down and you work out a plan with them first. Like, what do you need? What do you? And I guess you get a sense of what do they want to hold on to, right? And what are their concerns about where they're going? I guess a big, especially get older. I guess the biggest thing probably is downsizing, right? Is how do you uh, handle all the stuff they have and let go of all that stuff?
Yes, but even on like we sell these things with Nobody Move now, stick and sort, and it's color coded stickers, and people don't realize that even if you hire the best movers, if you're moving from one location to another, you have to be the foreman. Nobody's going to be able to tell them where to put stuff. Maybe you have to
Hmm.
hire someone to be like an interior decorator. But the truth is, even the most high level companies, without having that person, the homeowner needs their own spokesperson, foreman, so to
Hmm.
speak. So these stickers and prepping it prior allow you to not have to do that as much. And it takes away 90% of that work and a lot of costs because there's not 100 questions on where does this go? Where does this go? So we try to do it both practically and emotionally.
So, Rob, so the stickers are what? They're basically saying keep or dispose or place in some place. What do the stickers actually do?
That too, but let's say you were moving a family of four. You might have a blue sticker for your son's room and a pink sticker for your
Oh, I
daughter's
see.
room and a yellow sticker for the main room and a green sticker for the garage. Then the movers can sticker all the items, and then in the new house, you put the corresponding color on the door as you enter, and the guys know exactly where to put the stuff because there's a color on the piece.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Good. Good. And is
simple
there a
stuff.
yeah, yeah, no, simple but effective stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Because there's a lot of pieces you're working on, and then you're trying to make it as simple as possible so they can, focus on just doing it. Um,
absolutely.
um, yeah, yeah, and I know that you also have dealt with kind of crisis moves, precipitated by kind of natural disasters. I think you mentioned that, and you mentioned to me that you were. You're involved up here with Superstorm Sandy, and then in Florida. So
Correct.
talk a little about that too. 'Cause so those are really traumatic moves, or restorations, that maybe
Yes, after Sandy, because we did cleanouts, we were able to stay working when there was not much moving going on.
right.
And I was still kind of new, I was 4 years in, but it allowed me to have a window into that business. And over the years, we've kind of became like a resource for all restoration companies. We work with like 40, and as
Wow.
well as insurance carriers. And when there's fire or water damage, we come in and we take the salvageable stuff. If it needs to
Oh,
be cleaned, we clean it, and then we store it till the reconstruction's done. The difference with that move is, contrary to what I said in the last segment just now, we have to put the stuff back exactly as it was. We make
oh,
it like nothing ever happened. So now we're
oh,
using, company cam softwares and Matterports that do virtual walkthroughs, so we can put your books back in order exactly how they were. So
mm,
it's a totally different type of moving, but the idea is that, hey, it's just another level of stress, and that's what we're good at helping people with. So
wow, wow.
yeah,
So do you just like take pictures of the way things are, and it's all right. We got to
exactly,
restore it this way, right? Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yep.
Um, and tell me a little bit more about those experiences. What was it like doing that? Especially for me. And so we were lucky in Superstorm Sandy. We had a lot of tree damage and um, property damage in general, but the house itself was okay. We didn't get flooded, but that's dealing with when you lose your possessions. It's so I'm just recalling that last year we were down just visiting with my brother in North Carolina, and
Yes.
uh, yeah, well, he was in South Carolina. We were visiting in a state park in North Carolina where Hurricane Helene hit and just totally devastated this town, Chimney Rock, and it was just gone. I mean, that's so
Yep.
um, that it can be really something. Um,
It's absolutely tragic, and you see the level of which, like devastation can happen. And I've seen it on all levels, from the most high end in Manhattan to the burning of Breezy Point. You probably remember if you were on
yeah.
Long Island during Sandy. In Florida, we did a lot of work in Sanibel Island, and it's
Hmm.
a beautiful island. It's almost like not even known by most of America. Like, you wouldn't think you're in America there. And these people, they were being guided by us on Zoom calls, like neighborhood calls, to explain everything to them,
Hmm.
and the confusion. And my heart went out to these people, and most of them, it was their vacation home, so maybe insurance wasn't as good as their first residence.
Right.
And you understand that, hey, they're more fortunate, and they're probably better off, but at the same time they're still losing their vacation home that they worked for. And the confusion on what's salvageable and what's not and what's going to be covered. And even to the point where one elderly lady gets on and she was like, I'll never forget, she was like, you told me that the stuff outside is not going to be covered by insurance and just to call in your car because auto insurance will take care of it. But what if your neighbor's car floated into your garage? Like, like that's where they were at that point. Like, what do you do
Wow.
about that?
Wow.
I
Yeah.
remember thinking, like, how are you going to answer this one?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we'll figure out how to answer that one, but first we're going to take a quick break, Rob.
Sure.
So, folks, don't go away. We'll be coming right back after a short break, and we'll have much more with Rob Esposito. So, don't go anywhere.
Are you caring for an aging loved one? It can feel overwhelming, but you don't have to do it alone. Ron's book, The Caregiving Navigator, is a step-by-step guide designed to help you plan, prepare, and provide compassionate care with confidence. From organizing family conversations to navigating long-term care and finding support for yourself, the caregiver, it's all here. Find the Caregiving Navigator now on Amazon and take the first step toward peace of mind.
Welcome back, folks. This is Ron
Yeah.
Roel on Bold Brave TV, 45 Forward. We're talking today with Rob Esposito, the founder of Relocators Services and the author of Nobody Move Without Reading This. Before the break, we were talking about some of the catastrophic situations that Rob gets involved in terms of helping people move or restore their places and so forth. So now I'm going to shift a little bit just to talk more broadly about what he's got in his book. The aim of the book, why he wrote it, and what's in the book. So talk about how you decided to write the book.
So I decided to write the book because when I started out, where I thought the fragmentation of the industry was the problem, I
Mm-hmm.
learned in my career that the emotional was the real problem. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not the logistical moment. It's, every moment from when your last child leaves for college and you look around and think your house might be too big, through months and years later, through the logistical move, to months and years later where you like find a barber and beauty parlor you love,
Mm.
so to speak, like till you're finally settled. And it's that whole thing, and it kind of all becomes a perfect storm the day of the move. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
the tensions are so much and the stressors are so high. So I wrote the book kind of because the real estate industry, I felt, was not having it correct by giving away non-functional closing gifts at the closing table. Why not
Mm-hmm.
put the money as a listing appointment gift to prepare these people for something they're going to go through? Because the truth is, all of this stuff is common, but when it happens to you, it feels unique to your experience. And
Mm-hmm.
nobody would kind of like, it's not a taboo, but it is a taboo. Like, people don't talk about, like, oh, they hate their sister now because, they had to clear out mom's home, or, what happened with their children, or what drawers were seen by the movers, and all these things that people don't, discuss openly, but they kind of live that stress and that trauma, especially when they're compiled with, hey, splitting up the home after a divorce, or
Mm-hmm.
unloading the house I grew up in really affected me. People don't want to
Mm-hmm.
admit that, maybe, or it's just not something I see openly talked about.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of it has to do with families. So maybe it's a couple moving, but then their kids are involved. They're adult kids, or sometimes they're if they're younger, they're still teen kids, so moving with them. So how do you deal with the family situations?
I try to give advice when it's warranted and ask
Okay.
if I may,
Right.
if I'm asked. What I recommend to everybody, and I'm a big proponent of, I came up with the concept that I've seen that no matter how many children are in a family, when a parent dies, and there could be one person, this dynamic of three personalities always shows up, where you have the
Mhm.
caretaker, the executor, and the one that doesn't like give a shit. And they clash at the
Mhm.
emptying of the home.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue is that the caretaker spends years caring for mom or dad. They never take money because it's life full circle, and that's what they're supposed to do as a human, they probably feel, because they have that mentality. But as soon as their brother John becomes the executor, well, now they want reimbursement for that money. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
there should be a law that if you're caring for your parents and there's a will, you're getting your hourly rate, whatever that's supposed to be, and
Mm-hmm.
you'll avoid all these family conflicts. So I try to just say what I see, and that's why I'm steering more towards the books and stuff now, because the things are common, and it just happens in every family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you talk about the book as a roadmap. So walk me through a little bit of the road. Walk me through the sort of the logistics of the chapters. How do you go step by step through this?
So I'd hired a ghostwriter um, in Britain, like a British scholar, and then I went to hand it in, and it wasn't my voice. I wound up kind of rewriting the whole 80,000 words in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And yeah, I created this whole structure where it goes, each chapter goes horror story, advice, hacks, real world hacks, and then conclusion. And then
Mm-hmm.
most of them have an expert giving advice as well in the real estate profession, not a real estate actual, but someone who's around the business. And it also has overarching themes, of accountability and kind of like business tips where it's moving, but it's moving through life. It's like the
Mm.
Bible on moving and all the ways you'd move, but it's really telling you to move through life and recommending things through life. It starts out with D Schneider's chapter, which I added in the last 2 weeks because I was moving him and I asked for a feature, and he wound up writing a personal story from his childhood, which is about like a bait and switch move, which is kind of like the reason I wrote the book in the first place. So it was like, holy cow, I need to make this an actual chapter. This isn't just a feature. And so I added a prologue and epilogue, which kind of gave it those overarching themes. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, D is who from Twisted Sister. Is that right?
Yes, the lead singer is a local legend on Long Island, and he's a rock star from the '80s. We're
Right.
not going
Right.
to take it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and so he was at your book launch. Is that right?
He filmed the commercial for the book.
Oh, okay. From
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, he accidentally launched the book because the news they picked up him filming a commercial. Yes.
I see.
So we're
Interesting.
running a commercial with him on News 12 right now.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So let's walk through some of these things. So some of the examples you want to talk about, some of the horror stories, and some of the advice and what the hacks.
Sure. One horror story that always comes to mind is the gentleman was moving his family to Florida. He
Mm-hmm.
was telling everybody that they were moving to Florida. We came to give an estimate, storage, move. There was going to be a delay between buying the house, and the day we moved the stuff out, he surprised everybody and was really divorcing. And the letters came, and the poor wife and us, relocators, were left kind of holding the bag, and the stuff was stuck in storage for 7 years while it got litigated. And like, imagine the thought of putting your 8-year-old child's stuff in storage and not seeing it again till they're 15. Like, uh, uh, you never think something like that could happen when you're packing a box, but that's the stress we're talking about.
Wow.
So that's an unfortunate story.
Yeah. So you say, were you still there on the other side of that story?
We didn't make a dime until 7 years later, and they paid us all. And when it got settled in court, and I met her that day, and it was very rewarding meeting her and seeing her. But yeah, it had been a long, arduous situation.
Wow.
But you see
Wow.
it on both levels. Like, we don't let people into their estate sales. I shouldn't say let. We advise them not to because they're so emotional. And one time we had an elderly woman who I think she had cancer. I believe she had like diabetes. She had a few different illnesses, but she was still going, and her mind, she was sharp as a whistle, pushing 90 years old, and she insisted on staying. And when my manager walked upstairs to check on her, she had, her stomach in knots, thinking she's going to be so emotional. And it turned out like she was all done up with makeup and a dress because she was fascinated by how many elderly men were showing up to her estate sale. She wanted to meet someone. So you see it, you see life full circle there. So yeah, it's
Wow.
pretty cool.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about some of the advice and some of the hacks. What are some of the significant hacks people should know about?
The number one thing I say is before you call anybody in, if it's a house that is of any sentimental value to you, with maybe a house you raised your children in, or the house you brought your child home in, or the house you were raised in, videotape the entire house before you call anybody. Before you do anything, do that. That's the biggest advice I could give everybody, because I've seen time and time again people would pay a fortune to have that when they no longer can, and they don't realize it till it's too late. A dumb one that is kind of like, oh, of course, but nobody thinks of it a lot, is you should have the locksmith at the house the day you're moving in. You have people that you have no idea who has the keys to your house, and it might not be the person you bought the house off of, but who knows who they give the keys to over the years. And people don't think, have your carbon monoxide and smoke alarms ready to go for moving day for the house you're moving into. Have your stickers for your windows for the fire and police. We try to provide all of that in like these care packages that we sell with the book to kind of make it like a 1, 2, 3 things you have to do.
Wow, interesting. Okay. And so I'm going to ask you about some of those hacks, but what are the things that people,
Sure.
forget to do, so or overlook in the process? So that's one of them we mentioned,
Your
the
phone
key
chargers, all the
phones.
wires, all the remotes, all the phone chargers, all the kids' iPads that's going to keep them occupied, all that stuff that you use all the time, get into one box. We have these stickers that we give people to put on boxes: refuel, which is food; recharge, which is all your chargers, remotes, and electronics and adapters and stuff; refresh, which is your toothpaste and socks and underwear and toothpaste and a bar of soap; toilet paper. You don't know what you're walking into. So all of those things, and then remember me, which is all your important docs that you might need, like the deed or
Interesting.
the closing docs, or licenses or things you might need. I don't know if you're traveling through the state or getting on a plane to move. So those 4 boxes are like the 4 primaries, like have them available and pulled out of everywhere else.
Interesting. That's nice. Yeah. So these are things that they might forget to do. What about things you tell them don't do? That they do that don't do, the don'ts, that really makes it harder for themselves and for you.
A lot of times when we go on estimates, people will say oh, my husband will do that, or, like my husband's going to do the garage, or we're going to take the boxes. And I think people don't realize that 50% of the amount of stuff does not equal 50% of the cost. It's moving is most of the time men per hours, and it's about time, and that stuff the men do every day, and it's really easy for them. But taking apart a TV a week before, or taking apart a bed frame and sleeping on a mattress, that's stuff that'll take higher level or higher skilled guys more time to disassemble and reassemble. Where if you're able to do that, that's how you actually save money, because 50% of the items might only account for 10% of the cost if there's a lot of complicated stuff to take apart and put back together. And
Yeah.
don't tell us you're going to not put the guns in the gun safe and then put all the guns in the gun safe, because everybody does that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I read that one of your specialties is moving furniture. So what are the issues about moving furniture. And actually, let me just hold up for a second. We're going to take a
Sure.
quick break.
Sure.
But that's what I'm talking about, because I guess in my experience, a lot of my move is like, oh, how do you get this in and out of a room? How do you get it into places that it doesn't fit any
Yeah.
longer? So we'll talk about that when we come back. But again, folks, we're going to take a quick break. Obviously, we have a lot more to talk about with Rob Esposito, the author of Nobody Move. We'll be right back.
Do you like what you're hearing? Well, we've got plenty more where that came from. Head over to 45forward.org, where you'll find a full archive of over 200 episodes of the 45 Forward podcast, all hosted by Ron. Each week, Ron talks with fascinating guests, experts, advocates, and everyday folks, sharing insights and stories to help you live a better, fuller life in your second half. We cover everything from health and caregiving to careers, relationships, and finding purpose, whatever helps you move forward with clarity and confidence. That's 45forward.org. Check it out and keep moving forward. 45 Forward.
Welcome back, folks, to 45 Forward. Once again, we're talking today with Rob Esposito, the founder of Relocators Services and the author of Nobody Move Without Reading This. Now, before we continue, I just wanted to mention to you, if you or your friends miss this live show, don't worry. They can they can always find replays of my conversation with Rob Esposito on Bold Brave TV's YouTube channel. Just click on my 45 Forward playlist. And you could also find an audio replay of the show on major streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. So before the break, we started to talk about one of Rob's specialty, and one of the things that is probably extremely problematic is moving furniture. And what are the challenges of doing that? Without banging it up, getting it through doors that no longer fit, and stuff like that. So talk a bit about that, and then we'll talk about more case studies.
Sure. One thing I advise, and then kind of like moving furniture, is have all the felt for the bottom of the furniture, especially if you have wood floors, because instead of having to put it all on, putting it all on when they're moving it in is the perfect time, and you kind of kill two birds with one stone, because now you're protecting the floors as you jiggle the stuff around and get it into its exact place, as well as you're protecting it for the future. You don't have to do it, and making sure you wrap every piece and not just wrap a blanket around it, wrap it completely. We usually wrap it with movers blankets and then shrink wrap, as well as tape, keep it secure, like almost like you could throw it in the water and it would be okay. So really make sure everything's tight and with the proper protection. If it's a certain fabrics, it'll get paper before it'll get blankets and shrink wrap, as opposed to plastic on them. Being aware of that, other items can't get tape on them. So knowing what you're dealing with.
Yeah. I'm hearing you talk, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this, a lot of technical expertise. How did you pick this up over the years? I mean, you didn't. I guess you just sort of learned as you went along. Did you have any other people who you worked with who helped you, gave you advice and mentored you in any way, or just?
I had people that mentored me in business. As far as
Okay.
the tricks I learned, I would say I fell forward a lot. I'm the king of falling forward and learning. I had a couple of people along the way for brief moments, how to load a truck or how certain items should be packed. But for the most part, we picked it up as we went and we grew into it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, one of my favorite expressions is, even when you fall flat on your face, you're still falling forward. So
It's a great one. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So I want to, during the break, we were talking about other sorts of interesting stories and case studies, and one of them we mentioned Dee Snyder. So why don't we talk a little bit more about that whole? You start the book with that. Talk about that whole case. An interesting story.
Yes, and It is. It's about his father. He was, I think, 5 years old at the time, and D
Hmm.
is an author himself, and he's a really good writer. So reading his was definitely like kind of, steel sharpened steel. It made me want to write better. And he talks about being a kid and the fact that he's a rock star and people love having him move. It's a pleasure to move him because he's a rock star. So people want that. But his father, was a victim of bait and switch back when he was 5 years old. And he was moving his entire young family down to Florida to like I think it was a pre Disney Orlando. And it was for a business opportunity, and in the end they had an agreed upon price, and they got there and they wouldn't unload the truck unless he paid double. And obviously the guy was a young father, he had a young family, had little babies, he didn't have much of a choice, and in the end he had to fold to get his stuff for his family. And you totally understand like how terrible that is for him.
Hmm.
And I try to then flip it to say the reasons things like that happen, not for him. Him was clearly looks like it was a bait and switch, but all the other stressors like having a young family and moving them across the country, or starting a new business, or trying to take a gamble on a business opportunity that winds up not working out in an unknown area.
Hmm.
So there's a lot more than the actual bait and switch that we delve into throughout that part of the chapter, but the story itself is written extremely well. It's funny, and unfortunately it was a bait and switch. And my goal with it though was, after we did the commercial, his father's 94 and he still lives on the island. I wound up writing him a letter and a book saying like, I hope this rectifies what you went through back then. And we wound up having like a correspondence back and forth, and
Oh,
it was pretty cool. And it was definitely gratifying because I think it did in the end, kind of like settle something that is the gripe he had his whole life. And he
yeah.
wasn't a man to hold gripes, it don't seem like. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So, Rob, tell me a little more about what the bait and switch is. What's the bait and what's switched? I mean, in terms of they give you certain terms and then they switch on you.
So moving is not something that's finite. Like if you're going to
Hmm.
get a deck estimate or a roof estimate, you can measure what you're going to do and give a price for the materials and the labor. With moving, most of the time you don't know the second location. Other times people are not being completely truthful about the second location.
Hmm.
And I've seen it happen all different ways. And you don't know the factors that are involved: the traffic, the elevator breaks down in the building. So, all these things make moving estimates really estimates. So, you have to
Hmm.
try to be as accurate to account for stuff. And what I talk about is how I think in the 90s, there was a lot of bait and switch going on, and probably prior, where, they would give you a price, lowball the estimate to get the job, beat out the other guy who's probably the right guy because he's giving you the right price.
All right.
And then they would, wait till they had all your stuff in a truck and say, hey, this is what you owe me, as they arrived to the second location.
Oh, okay.
And, you hear about it sometimes on the news too. And I've spoken on News 12 about it. The flip side to that is that there are good companies that this happens to, and the factors I just mentioned, as well as I've seen where a prominent person was downsizing because of a loss of job, and they were trying to put 6,000 square feet into a 2,000 square foot house, and that's going to cause the time to double. The moving around, the wedging stuff in, it's not ready for it. Or like I joke around and say like, you think it's easy? I bet you wouldn't want the job of predicting how many times your spouse will want the couch repositioned. Like that's like my joke for it, because you don't know. It's not like you're just nailing in a deck board or a shingle.
Mm-hmm.
But there's ways to circumvent the bait and switch part.
Mm-hmm. And how do you do? I mean, how do you do that? And what's
Like how you do it with everything in life, communication. and
Uh-huh.
open communication while it's happening. You know,
Mm.
like when someone says on the estimate they're going to pack everything and then they don't pack the kitchen, we have a manager call and say, you know, we'll have the crew do all the work. And then when we get to that point, we'll say, hey, we're going to have to stay because you want us to pack the kitchen now. We're just letting you know, obviously that's going to make the job take an extra 2 hours. Or we try to be there as it's happening to let people know. Sometimes, and I have to train my foreman this a lot because they think if the job goes over, their tip's going to be affected. And I say, hey, on the estimate, the person's trying to save as much money as possible and guard themselves. They see you start working. They think they're getting value now because they see how good you are. And then they want you to take the stuff because they don't want to wait for their husband to do it. So
Mhm.
you should really, be thankful about that, but talk about it. So you're managing with the client and working as a team to make this process go smoother.
Right. So yeah, what I'm hearing is it's like handle things as they come up. Don't let them, you know, uh,
It's just
lapse.
communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
if you're honest with communication, there's never problems. Even problems are solutions.
Yeah. But don't let them lapse and say, all right, we'll take care of this later. Basically, no, let's take care of it in real time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what are some of the things? So you work with other professionals. What are some of the things that you feel other real estate professionals should know about moving? I think at one point you talk about, part of what you want to do is disrupt the industry in a sense to get people more aware of, I guess you'd call it persons like in the medical field, like patient-centered care. So this is person-centered moving, like focus on them more than,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I think the industry is so based on a transactional model,
Mm-hmm.
the awards, everything that goes around with it. And it needs to be personable and it needs to be a human model. And AI is going to take care of that. I firmly believe that the real estate industry as a whole is, I believe, going to totally look different in the next 5 or 10 years. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the good ones and the ones that are really, taking a human aspect of it, which they all should be, because the fact of the matter is, statistically speaking, people live to 77 years old and move 11.5 times in their life. So that
Wow.
means every 6.5 years, you have a client, statistically speaking.
Wow.
They should be lifelong clients. They should be generational clients because you're there to care for them. And that's what Nobody Move is. That's what we're trying to create, a model where, hey, you're going to your realtor for, your broken chimney 2 years after you bought the house,
Mm-hmm.
because they're your trusted resource in the community. And that's kind of what we're trying to create with Nobody Move.
Yeah. Yeah. So you work with, I guess you work with lawyers, you work with real estate
Everybody.
professionals, everybody. Yeah, yeah. And what are the things that they need to know that they don't know, so, or they think they know that and they don't know?
I think moving is looked at, rent a truck, DIY, could kind of do it yourself. So I think they're not seen as important to the process as everyone else. But
Hmm.
what they don't see, and I'm a little different because of my history with the estate sales, so I've seen it my whole life, the whole way through. I'm not just the mover who came on at the end.
Right.
That all these guys and girls are taking you to the walkthrough and walking away and then
Right.
celebrating, giving you a gift and celebrating. And the
Mm-hmm.
fact of the matter is, it hasn't even started yet for the people.
Mm-hmm.
Like all their trauma is about to happen. You just, and none of them see it. None of them see it.
Right. Right.
Some
Okay.
of them see it. I don't want to say none of them see it,
Right.
but
Okay.
some of them see it. The good
Yeah.
ones do, the 10%.
Right. Right. Okay. We gotta take another short break before we come up with our final segment. Still a lot to talk about. We'll get it all in. Folks, we're going to take another short break. When we come back, we'll be talking much more with Rob Esposito, the author of Nobody Move. So come right back.
Caring for a loved one can feel overwhelming. That's why we created caregivingnav.com, your personal guide through the complex world of caregiving. It's a free, interactive website built around the Caregiving Navigator book, with tools designed to make your journey easier. Whether you're planning ahead, managing care right now, or navigating a crisis, you'll find step-by-step advice, trusted resources, and over a dozen downloadable checklists. From legal planning to home safety, from medical decisions to emotional support, it's all here, all in one place. Just visit caregivingnav.com, because you're not alone on this path, and the help you need is just a click away.
Welcome back, folks, to our final segment with Rob Esposito, who started the company called Relocators, and we were talking about his book, Nobody Move. He's an expert on moving. Before the break, we were talking about working with other professionals, and I think what point he made is that people think that they're part of the chain of transactions, and then they think they're sort of done, and now the move happens, which is really when the stuff hits the fan. So when that's where Rob comes up to really execute the move. So and I think there is I think a little bit of underappreciation for, like, well, okay, you guys are just the movers, but I'll tell you, as you mentioned, well, you could do it yourself. It's like, no, no, you couldn't. I had
Until you do it yourself.
no idea. I saw we had my wife and I, when we moved from Manhattan out to Long Island. We had to pick up some stuff from my family in Brooklyn, and then come out to Long Island, and we did it over a 4th of July weekend. So we rented a truck, and guess what happened? The truck broke down in the middle of, I don't know where we were, somewhere in Brooklyn or Queens, and I was driving, and I'm going to come to a stop, and I'm like, no brakes, so
No
so
brakes?
no brakes. Luckily, I pulled over. I just happened to be cruising over in the right lane. I wasn't speeding, so I pulled over, and then it was a nightmare. The people, the rental truck company comes out, and they bring a battery. We're like, we don't need a battery. We need brakes. We need a new truck.
Yeah,
So
it was a different BR word.
yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, Rob, so that, not surprising, that was the last DIY we did. And we haven't moved that much, but that was the last one for sure. So I think it's true. I think that there's a lot that goes into your job, and I think in some cases it's not really understood and appreciated. So I'm glad you're there. I'm glad you wrote the book, and I know that you're working on some other stuff too. That's a spin-off of the book. Is that right?
Yes. So I was going to self-publish it, as I said, and a chance
Hmm.
lunch led to, a contract. And my plan is to do 4 more major books. And right now we're about to release some minor books, and they're more utilitarian. One's the workbook, which is absolutely fantastic. It covers everything from the moment you decide to sell a house through timed timeline of things to do, checklists, and things to mark off, as well as worksheets and a post-move punch list to take you after the move. And we're
Hmm.
also about to publish a journal for memories. So you kind of like New Year's
Hmm.
resolution, you can, discuss your achievements and reflect back on them. And, hey, I came to this house and I had my
Hmm.
first son home here, and now I have 2 kids, and I'm soon to have a third, but they won't be in this house. It's going to kind of, what traditions would you like to take with it? Would you start in
Hmm.
this home? What brought with you? Really make it like, use the moves of your life to signify the stages of your life as you go
Hmm.
about.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
we got some cool things. And the next
Yeah.
major book is Nobody Move, I Barely Can, which is empty nest to death, but it's gonna have an overarching theme of growing old. The way this one
Okay.
is, about moving through life is the overarching theme. That one will be about growing old.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. So,
Yeah.
well, first of all, so where can people get your current book?
NobodyMoveBook.com is
Okay.
our website, and there's some products there, some merch, as well as the book. And we also offer for professionals this care package that we sell 50 care packages to provide for their clients as prospecting gifts and listing appointment gifts at the beginning of the process.
Mm-hmm. And you also have a separate website, right?
USRelocators.com is our main company, as well as
Okay.
sistersincharge.com for our estate sales.
Oh, okay. All right. So good. So I'm glad people know about that. And on your website, I think you have tips and ideas and resources in there as well.
Absolutely.
And you,
Absolutely.
and you can probably
Yep.
get the book from the website as well, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Good. And then I think the last thing is you have a YouTube channel, right?
Yes, it's US Relocators at US Relocators, and the Instagram is behind me at rspo_TDIA,
Okay.
which it
Okay.
all
Good.
leads to each other.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure you get that in, people. And if people want to
Thank
reach
you.
you, what's your contact information for reaching you? What's the
My
best way to reach you?
headquarters is in Hauppauge, Long Island. My email is robert@usrelocators.com, and
Okay.
our office number is 516-595-7420.
Right. Right. And you're, in my area, but I assume that you work in lots of other areas as well, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Yep. Good. Good. Wow. Well, this has been very helpful, very educational, Rob. I'm looking forward to this. And when are your new books
Me
coming
too.
out, do you think? By the end of the year?
The workbook and the journal will be within the next month,
Okay.
and the next major will be about a year out.
Okay. Very good.
Yep.
Very good. Wow. Well, thanks very much. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot. I hope my audience has learned a lot as well, and they'll continue to learn from you. Um,
Thank you.
Once again, I wanted to thank Rob and also thank my engineer, Christian, who's part of a terrific team that guides me through every show. So if you are watching now or you're not watching, once again, you can listen to it as a podcast on major streaming platforms. And you can listen to it on the YouTube channel of Bold Brave TV. You can also listen to it on the 45 Forward YouTube channel. Just look for 45 Forward. So, folks, again, be sure to join me next Wednesday. I'm on every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be talking with Stephen Lesk, who is a distinguished, long-practicing psychiatrist and the author of Footprints of Schizophrenia. And he's going to explain an innovative theory about the largely unexplored evolutionary roots of mental illness, which is something that we also don't talk about very much these days, but is becoming increasingly important for both younger and older folks. So until then, folks, keep moving forward, 45 forward.
This has been 45 Forward with host Ron Roel. Tune in each week as Ron tackles the many aspects of health, finance, family and friends, housing, work, and personal pursuits, all as part of an integrated plan and to take charge of your unretiring life during these uncertain times. Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.